Hi, how are y'all? Thank you guys for waiting. Sorry, I was sitting here for like a minute, not understanding why nobody was responding to me. Um, I had to click go live. But also, thank you guys for everyone who didn't get the memo earlier that I had reset it to noon. I forgot to reset StreamYard. So you guys got to come hang out for like 2 hours. I know Justin was singing to himself. How are y'all doing? Antonius Block. I would have been Antonius Blockus. Justin was in here singing to himself. But yeah, welcome in. Definitely welcome in. Um, hello. Hello. Give me 1 second. My poodle is what caused this delay. Hi, Nash. How are you? Give me 1 second. BRB. Oh, Jess and fam too. I thank you. Were you in there last night? Oh my gosh. Well, you know, sweetheart and a psycho sometimes. But I am a sweetheart, you're right. Oh, is Keno in here? Did you make it in? Lemon curd. How's everybody? Oh my gosh, you have a Bichon? Brichet? Yeah, my standard poodle is I always think of her as being small, but she's not. She's like 60 pounds. But my golden doodle is twice as big and he's a gentle giant, but she's nuts, y'all. Hey, Mr. Feelgood, how are you? Hey, give me just 1 second, you guys. Right back. Sweet boy. Okay. Okay, maybe we can get this show on the road. You have a cavapoo? Oh, how cute. I love dogs, you guys. I love all animals. I have to kick them out, though, because they tend to love me too. They act like cats whenever they come in here. Hey, Kim, how are you? You're folding laundry? Okay. Hopefully you can watch because this is the part 3 of going through all the evidence that they presented at their preliminary hearing. And I saved this one until last because it was like the science part and I needed to figure out how to break it down to everybody. Raise your hand if biology was like your biggest nightmare. You require to know what my color my poodle is. Okay, so she's actually blue, but there's how the little communities go, right? And she is AKC, but I'm in the poodle groups, and there are a number of people who say that blue is actually just a bad black, like a black with not enough ink. But I mean, it is a color that is recognized by AKC. Who cares about that? But anyway, she's blue, but she looks black. Hey, everybody hated it. Let me see. I'm reading something else comments. It's Ken. I thought it was Keno. That's funny. I love craps, so it's better than me calling you craps. Yeah, she loved it too. Used to try to get into it. Yeah. Chemistry and physics. Listen, glad we have our autistic friend in the house here who can do physics and chemistry, because let me tell you, my undergrad is in biology, but physics and chemistry were so tough for me, and I think it's because I'm very like, I need to be like hands-on or like have a concept, and those are so like abstract for me that it was really tough. In fact, organic chemistry like kind of clicked whenever we got out the models, but after that, and by the way, I'm dyslexic, so it's all backwards to me, but I actually love genetics. And yeah, and the only time I was ever good at math was in applied statistics. Like that makes total sense to me because you can apply it to genetics and biology. So I loved it. And I haven't taught or tutored anybody on it in a long time. So this is actually going to be really fun. So for anyone who is like scared of biology, don't freak out when you see the slides. Okay. Nash, I really hope that you watch, unless you can just follow along. You know what, Nash, you said you love it. So you probably already know. I can't do math either. Lemon, you should have just been an attorney. Yeah. Okay, cool. Cool, Nash is watching. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I think what I'm going to do, because this is kind of like a little bit more content heavy, it's not too long. I'm going to get you guys out of here within an hour. But I had been just starting to go through like the entire presentation and then stopping to talk to you guys afterwards. But I think we can take some breaks here because it's relevant to the evidence that was presented, and y'all are probably going to have some questions. Okay, let me take a sip. This is not sponsored by, but hey, if y'all are watching and y'all have any ideas, La Croix. I mean, I'm open to sponsorships. Okay, cool. So let me bring up this presentation. Good morning. You got in here just in time. Okay, let's do this. So welcome to part 3, for those of you who speak English, of the evidence from the preliminary hearing. And this section is specifically the science part. So like the DNA and the forensics, or the firearm forensics. And if you guys have tuned in or have seen parts 1 and 2, you're going to recognize some of these slides kind of. I didn't reinvent the wheel. I was very good and didn't do more work than I had to. I'm usually a perfectionist, so I'm pretty impressed with myself that I've been able to just like let these slides and presentations go and just like, you know, speak for themselves. Otherwise, I would spend hours on this stuff. Okay. And of course, it did this again. All right. So this chart is of the DNA evidence that they tested, as well as the gun and the bullet jacket and the fragments, right? So we have kind of 2 buckets. We've got the DNA, and then we have the actual physical evidence that they recovered from Charlie and the gun, right? And I want you to think about this, like, even though I've got this saying that some of this is going to like the ATF lab, which is the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms lab, and then the FDA. Oh my gosh. Hello, Rio, wake up. Yeah, the FBI DNA lab. It's still all under the Department of Justice, right? So it's easier to think about it like that. Like the standards if you guys listened to the examination of these witnesses, the attorney Burt, excuse me, was really repetitive a lot with each one of them, and he was just setting the foundation of like the different the standards that they use. They're not different standards actually. It has to do with like DOJ terminology and such. So I included this to just kind of break it down. But so the DNA from the gun specifically, just the gun. So like taking the swabs from the gun, that was sent over to the ATF DNA lab. They have a different, like they have their own DNA lab, which is pretty cool. And then the DNA from other evidence, we've got the towel and the screwdriver, which we all know about. And that's really, those are the two that we ended up getting results from. But maybe what y'all didn't pick up on is that they had sent in that backpack that was found. And it had actually, the lab had actually processed it, but the FBI and SBI, so like Utah State Bureau of Investigation, and then the FBI, they called and they said, we don't need the analysis on it because it belongs to one of, to a member of Charlie's security detail. And so it's funny that they sent it off for processing, but they were like, hold the analysis of it. Okay. And then they sent in some swabs from the northeast corner of the Losi Center where he, jumped off the roof, where he Spider-Man'd off the roof. But we didn't hear anything about those results because none of them had any DNA. How convenient, right? So that went over to the FBI state lab. And then we've got the gun and the bullet, the actual gun and the bullet jacket and fragments. And that went to the ATF firearm and toolmark forensics lab. And we have our different witnesses here. And I know I've sat there and listened to this stuff over and over again. And as of this morning, I think I've concluded that I actually like the way these women testified. For a while, I was really unsure, but I had to re-listen to it to see if there were any errors or any biases. But I have to say, they really did all actually do their job. I was having a little bit of an issue with Miss Amanda Baker here because she kept on looking over at the judge, and it was like driving me crazy. So, okay, let's go through it. Okay, so Attorney Burke starts to lay the foundation with each one of them with the same line of questioning, which is the standards and protocols for these experts when they're writing their reports, okay? And this is for autosomal DNA genotyping. Don't freak out when we say that, okay? And obviously for the gun and that physical evidence, that's not going to be DNA. The third row down, that's not going to be DNA, but it's going to apply to the rest of this. So for each of these experts, the DOJ says a couple things. They're guidelines, really. They cannot imply that DNA or a bullet is 100% match ever. Absolute. And the best way to think about this is we all share 99% DNA. We all, like every single one of us. But then there's 1% or less that is unique to each of us, except like identical twins. And if anybody in the crowd has ever had a paternity test, it's interesting because it'll never come back 100%. I think like 99 point, and I could be wrong, 99.8, I think is they'll, render paternity, but it's usually like 99.9. So interesting, right? And that just goes to show you that DNA is never going to be 100%, just because there's always that variable that it could be somebody. I mean, we should all have unique DNA, but my point is they can't say that. At the same rate, on the other side, they can't state that there's a 0% error rate well, that's actually on the same side. So, you know, if you were to say 100% match, that would mean that it has a 0% error rate, or that it's infallible. So they also can't use terms such as reasonable degree of scientific certainty. A lot of times you'll hear this medical certainty, and we hear that terminology when we have like physicians and expert witnesses, but the DOJ says that these examiners cannot, say that. And I think it's the difference between the DOJ analysis. They're not like experts. Does that make sense? They're just the ones who have run the test. It's just their report. An expert witness is allowed to say that, if that makes sense. So basically, these women showed up to testify because they were the ones who wrote the reports. They're not experts. They're just the ones who did the testing. Yeah. So you'll hear a doctor or a retained expert say with a reasonable degree of, medical scientific certainty. Okay. They also can't state how or when a DNA is deposited or the source of it. So he was saying, like, you can't have a headline that says Tyler Robinson's DNA was found on this. Is that correct? And that is correct, right? Because there's never 100% match. It's a very interesting little thing. So how does DNA get on things? I mean, you can touch it, bodily fluids. Also, interestingly enough, if you shake somebody's hand, this was a really good example that they used. If you shake somebody's hand and then that person goes and like touches, a gun, your DNA can end up on that gun. So DNA also can't say like when. And that's really interesting to me. And we're going to talk about degradation as a comparison tool. Just pause that thought for a second. We'll get there. Okay. So what terms can they use, right? They can use strong evidence to include someone as contributing DNA, or exclusion. And there's like a whole scale. There's like 5 different options, right? So they can say, inclusion or exclusion, and then they give their data points to back that up, right? Okay, how's everybody doing in here? DNA from the gun, that was Tyler's. Yes, it was degraded. That, Ruth May, is exactly what I'm going to talk about, because they say that degradation also, you also can't tell order. That's the thing either. So if 5 people touch something, you can't tell what order it was in or who touched it last. Sexually rule out known sample yet. Tumor removing. So lemon curd. It's, good thing you brought that up. That they use a known sample. So lemon curd is talking about the difference between excluding using a known okay, someone we expect to be there. Okay, so you have a woman who is sexually assaulted, right? And you're going to do a vaginal swab. Well, you expect, if she has like a husband or a consensual partner, that his DNA is probably going to be there too, right? So to exclude it, they will take his DNA. And what happens then is, if you have like this whole pot of DNA and he is in it, then you extract that. And is anything left? If there's anything left that doesn't match him, that helps them figure out who else. Does that make sense? So it's not the same as saying that someone is included or excluded. I know that was a really tricky part. Right. Yeah. Well, so removing Lance from the DNA from the mixed sample as a known sample. So the reason they didn't actually remove him, what they did was they expected his DNA to be on it, So to pare down on the number of people that could have contributed to this DNA, they ran his, like I just said, and pulled it out. So they're not saying that, I mean, that he is included. Strong probability of inclusion for him, right? So I know that was a little tricky. Maybe we're going to get to that and we can tease it out a little bit further. Okay. So yeah, so we're thinking more about DNA degradation, right? So how does DNA degrade? I love the term that they use, elemental insults, such as like UV light, obviously water, heat, humidity, and I'm going to talk about cleaning in just a second because I feel like that is very different. Obviously, if you expose DNA to the environment, it's going to degrade over time or, rapidly. But if it's left alone, it can last a really long time, like 40, 50 years. It's pretty stable, but it's also pretty sensitive. It's stable but sensitive at the same time. The thing with cleaning is, yes, DNA can be degraded with cleaning, but all of it is like every source is going to be cleaned, right? So I think even though they said that they can't tell if something's been cleaned, I think that there is, from what I have seen with DNA degradation, you can generally kind of tell. So, but I'm not the expert. What do I know? But hey, I have the same educational background as some of them. So, and okay, so degradation though does not have any impact on whose DNA was most recently deposited. So, Tyler's DNA on the gun was the most degraded, and his was the major contributor. But that does not mean that his was more, it just means that his was more present than some of the others. But that doesn't mean that he was either the last one there or whatever. It just means that more of his DNA got left on it. But what I find interesting is that he was the major contributor, and I'll repeat myself, but his was the most degraded. So although they cannot say when someone last touched it or who was the last to touch it, it is very odd to me that his was the most degraded and the others were not. And if you're thinking about a gun, it's all going to be exposed to the same elements, right? Like you're not going to have, his DNA right here and it's exposed to UV and then this one isn't. So to me, if you have multiple, sources of DNA on something and one is more degraded than the others, I do think that there can be some deductive reasoning from that. But I digress. Okay. So don't panic from this picture. I hope this doesn't give anybody nightmares, but we're going to break it down. Okay. We all have 23 chromosomes. All right. And you get one half from mom and one half from dad. So if you look at this picture, you can see that, right? Like on the left is mom and then on the right is dad. Not necessarily because they cross over, but for the sake of this presentation, just think of mom being on the left and dad being on the right. It doesn't matter. So we call the first 22 autosomal chromosomes. The 23rd are your sex chromosomes, and that's what we look at to see if you're male or female, just under the microscope. And there are, how like they say like male pattern baldness is passed through the mother. This is how this happens, because if you've got your X chromosome, okay, this person here is a man because he's got a Y. Women will only have XX all the time. So if you're a man, this man right here, and mom, the X, has male pattern baldness like on her side, then that's how he's going to get it. So yeah, let me see. I'm thinking here how I would. Okay, so also genotyping is different than phenotype. I'm not trying to give anybody nightmares, but let me just show you here. So genotype is how it expresses itself, how it shows up. Do you have blue eyes, green eyes, brown eyes? I'm sorry, that's phenotype. Genotype is what's in your genes, right? Okay, so we're gonna do, I'll show you guys this. And hopefully this doesn't give anybody nightmares. All right. Okay. So y'all can see the B's here, right? Okay, so on the top is dad, and on the bottom is mom, because remember, dad got his from mom and his from dad, but he's only going to give you one. He's only going to give you one, right? But this is what he has. And the big B stands for brown eyes, and the small b we'll just say it's blue eyes, right? And then we'll say mom has the same, right? And not to get too into this, but the big B is always, the big capital letter is always named for the dominant gene. I'm trying not to get too far into this, but this little Punnett square right here are all the possibilities. You just go in the chart, right? Okay, so these are all the possibilities that their offspring can have. Now, this right here is the genotype. That's what we're looking at, right? All of these. But the phenotype is how it's going to present itself. So like two big B's, that's going to be brown eyes. The two small ones, that's going to be blue. And then these two right here will show up as brown eyes. You will look as if you have brown eyes, but it is possible that you could pass on a blue-eyed gene to a child. I hope that makes sense. So that's the difference between genotype and phenotype. Just think of it like phenotype is physical and genotype is what you could pass on to somebody. Okay. Okay. Also, don't freak out, you guys. This is all good. So this is just one chromosome right here. Okay. Let's just say mom is on the left and dad is on the right. And you have these alleles, and this is what the experts were talking about. That yellow band, that represents, it says a locus for like a flower color gene. Don't even worry about the flower color gene. You can make it be whatever you want. We'll say it's eye color in human beings, okay? So that whole band right there is where your genes are located on this chromosome for eye color. And the alleles they were talking about on the stand, these witnesses, this is what they're talking about. So they're actually talking about those tiny little strips right there. You can see, yeah, one's for white, one's for purple, but just don't worry about that. So if you look over to what I have written over here, like one band is one locus, and it's made up of however many STRs. So an STR is a short tandem repeat, and if you look down at the diagram, it has GATA, and don't get don't get into the weeds there. This is very just the fundamental stuff. So you see that that first segment, right? And then it repeats itself. And it repeats itself 4 times, okay? So we're going to call that what you get from your mom. And then drop down below and you see it repeated 6 times. So short tandem repeats. How many times do you have that same thing copied over and over again? And I have here like example 11 mom, 12 dad. I should have probably said 4 mom, 6 dad. And yeah, so what we count is how many repeats are present. Hey, I hope y'all are following along. If y'all have any questions, yeah, the chromosomes are wearing skinny jeans. I love that. Oh, yes, I love that. That's so good. Lemon, you have really great questions. I will, whenever we get through this, I'll come back and answer your questions because those are really good. Okay, so this is a good time to say that the reason the defense team was going so hard on this allele thing and the methodology is because the methodology that these labs use is they are just counting how many times it repeats itself, right? It's not actually looking at the sequence. So here they have GATA. Everybody has different, right? But it could be ATCG or whatever. But with the STRs, they don't care. They don't care what's in it. They're just counting how many times it's replicated. But each person actually has different amino acids is what it's called. So that's why the defense team, was going after the methodology. Like, is there not a better way to do that? And they are developing the technology and they do have it, but it's not implemented yet. And I will say that with anything like this, with DNA, and it's so important, you can't just throw out new software or new programs without knowing what like the error rate is going to be and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, it's not these experts' fault that this is what the lab has. And and it's not bad. I mean, it's not bad. But, some people could have, 2 people could have an 11, 12, 11, 12. And that's kind of what he was getting to. Yeah, any combination of ATCG. So this is the example. So we're going to say that on the left is mom and on the right is dad. So that copies right over into that chromosome you see on the left. And just think that we're like shrunken down, right? And the way amino acids work is they pair up with certain amino acids on the other side. But what you end up getting is like a duplication or reverse duplication. And the whole purpose of this is that when you go to make your sex cells, so your eggs or your sperm, literally these chromosomes split down the middle. Okay. So if you think about it, like if you are mom and you're on the left and you're producing egg cells, you're only going to give that egg half of your DNA. Okay. Right? Because then it's going to come along and pair up with a sperm. So I just wanted to show you guys how the amino acids can change in everybody. And that's why Attorney Burt was grilling them, which they're not the people to grill, really. That's also why we had a bunch of objections, and the judge was saying this is going outside of the scope of probable cause, because it is true, if you're going to go for methodology, that's really something for trial and expert witnesses. So, I mean, it was fair. It was fair there. I did understand. And then this is just more on the defense counsel and their attack on the methodology. So you can see how the short tandem repeats, it's just looking at whatever you got, however many times. It's not looking at you as an individual. It's looking at you as a number. Whereas maybe like on the left, it's looking at you as an individual. and you're going to have a number. Hey, Mad Max, how are you? Okay. So that's just the backstory, and we're through the tough part. Okay, y'all, you made it through. Congratulations. I know that people had a hard time following, and I was bored to tears half the time with him repeating himself. So, anyways, but what about this degradation, right? And like we said earlier, DNA degradation can happen through environmental insults, which I love that term. But it doesn't have any impact, as I say, on determining who was the last to touch it. They technically can't tell whose is the oldest and whose is the most fresh. And that is fair to say, because I think that the error rate is higher than you would really want it. But it is weird to me that your suspect, out of 5 different DNA profiles that they find on this thing, is the most degraded. Because to me, if it hasn't been cleaned, okay, because cleaning it's going to like wipe it all away. If it's just everybody's touched it, and then there's only one that's the most degraded, it's like, was he the most recent to touch it? I don't know, but whatever. So the example is like, let's say you have 11 repeats from mom, okay, and 12 repeats from dad. So here's your chromosome, right? 11, 12, dad. Well, degradation can make some of those those little box cars drop out. So you can show up in a test as only having like 9 and 10. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So we're good here. And then just basically the degradation is drop out, and then you can drop in. So you can introduce DNA from the environment. That does happen. Okay. So there we go. Good job on making it through the science lesson. That was a little rocky. I haven't done that one in a long time, but I hope it makes sense. And definitely, if you want the slides, I can give them to you. But you're good. So what are our results here? Okay, so Amanda Baker, she was at the FBI lab. She's the DNA analysis there. All of the mixtures she had, and by mixtures, like the samples that come in on a swab, had more than one contributor. So there was more than one DNA profile on it. Your biology teacher in school is this good? Yeah. Oh gosh, thanks. I just like to, I learn best by when I really don't understand something, someone breaking it down to me as if I were like a 3 or 4-year-old. And I really think that helps people understand better, because once you get frustrated, like I kind of just space out. I'm like, I can't comprehend. So I appreciate it. Oh, thanks, Jess. I'm so glad. I'm glad. Okay. So all these samples she got in were mixtures. Basically, that just means there's more than one DNA profile on it, right? The result of this was, and don't be too confused, the 1789, that is just the item number in her report. That has nothing to do with anything else. So numbers 1 through 6, those were prints and swipes from the northeast corner of the Losi building. And they didn't get any DNA out of that, apparently. Apparently, no DNA. So there was nothing to report there. Okay. Number 7 was the towel, and it was less degraded than the screwdriver, but she was able to get like a full DNA profile. That means like a full person out of that. Like she could identify a full person. Well, more than one, right? And then number 8 was the screwdriver, and it was more degraded than the towel. And she was able to pull at least a partial profile from that to compare it to the known samples. The known samples were Tyler and Lance. And then 54 through 55, which our sleuths should look at, because I haven't really looked at it to see if I even saw that he ever touched a handrail. But 54 and 55 came from handrails, and obviously they had like more than 5 contributors on that, she could tell. So it's totally inconclusive. And then number 9, the backpack. Remember, we talked about it being processed. So it went through the machine that does all the math, right? But they said hold it on the analysis because it belongs to Charlie's security detail. And I just think there were so many things that were done wrong in this. And then going back to the elimination that we were talking about. So if you get a mixture, right, and you don't know if it's 2 or 3 people, what you can do is ask for a sample to eliminate. And you ask for someone we know is going to show up, right? So we assume is going to show up. So they used Lance for that because he was expected to contribute. And actually, this allowed her, and this, I mean, the attorney was trying to say like she was inconsistent or something, or because she originally had 3 contributors down on one of them. But with the help of the elimination with Lance, she was able to figure out it was 2. So it was Lance and Tyler, right? And that's how the elimination works. And I mean, I think that's telling that she's being more generous, because it's up to, it's not like the computer spits it out and it says there are 2 DNA profiles here. It actually takes the analyst to sit there and say, I think that this could be 3, 4, 2, 1. So she was being more generous with the 3 contributors, but then whenever she actually had the sample from Lance, she was able to deduce it. Okay, and then they talk about major and minor contributors. This doesn't mean anything other than like how much, it's a ratio of how much of someone's DNA was present versus somebody else. It doesn't mean that they were the last to touch it. It says nothing really. So interesting that they do that. Yeah. So number 7 was the towel, right? And that came back as Twiggs being 5% and Robinson being 95. And then on the screwdriver, 11% Twiggs and 89% Robinson. Again, I think that's just a data point. It doesn't actually go to the weight of anything. It's not saying that Tyler had it last. And I know Barron had brought this up, saying that science has to be repeatable, and that is true. But what I think gets misinterpreted is she had said, if you put these numbers into the machine, you're always going to get a different number. However, that is the machine being very sensitive to DNA, but the difference between all those is so minimal that it doesn't have any real impact. So it is basically like repeating it. You're still going to get the same parameters, if that makes sense. So it's not like you're unable to duplicate it. So I hope that helps clear some issues up. When she said, yeah, you can get different results. When she said you get different results every time, that is true. But it's like, think of it as being like decimal points or something. It's good that the machine is calibrated that way, to be honest. Okay, so Caitlin, she was also the DNA analyst, but she was over at the ATF, right? So she got the samples, the swabs from the gun. And crazy, all of hers were mixtures. So all of hers came back as 4+ people or 5+ people, which is crazy. And this is everything on the gun. And I did really like the foundation he laid, but, you know, I have some notes in here. There were like two, but I just told you how like major and minor contributors, it's just a data point. It's not, it doesn't say anything really. So they had like 2 major contributors and then out of 4+ people. I mean, it gets kind of wild. And she had actually, this is another place that it messed up. They messed up. It's not her. It's not her who messed up. It was the FBI and the SBI, because she, just like they had used twigs as elimination to, it's like deductive reasoning, you know? It's like, okay, you got a bag of M&Ms and you put them in a bowl and you say, okay, Lance is the green one. So you pull out all the green ones and then you can see what's left, if that makes sense. So you just eliminate that out. But she had asked for agent samples because they had been the ones that had collected data, collected the evidence. And I think that's totally fair, and they should have. Honestly, I think that should be a violation, because this man is facing the death penalty, essentially. And for them to not help the DNA analysis by sending in their samples, I think is quite negligent and just like a total disregard for this whole process. So yeah, she had asked for agent samples. She didn't get them. And then on the trigger and the trigger guard, it was the major contributor, who was Tyler, who had the most degradation. That's what we were talking about. It's like, well, but there were 4+ contributors to it. So how does his get degraded, but the rest don't? Unless his was the oldest, but they're not going to say that. And then Attorney Burke was bringing up literature, which is correct, that 70% of 4 contributors actually show up as 2 to 3. So essentially what this saying is, you could have 4 or 5 contributors, but an analyst looking at it may say, okay, this is 2 to 3 people. And why? Because some of us have the same 11 and 13, and maybe 2 other people have 11 and 13. So we're going to look the same under the scope. Does that make sense? So his argument was, the problem is that 70% of mixtures of 4 to 5 people or more present as 2 to 3. And right there, I think, is the biggest issue that I saw with the methodology. But not their fault. You're welcome, Jess. I'm so glad that you could tune in. Yes, definitely finish it. Or honestly, yeah, she's not given a scope to remove. She said she was given a scope to remove Lance, so therefore not being neutral. Well, it wasn't, they weren't removing Lance. It wasn't removing, because they expected him to be there, and he was. So that was like a known thing that they expected in the environment. So it wasn't really, it was not that they were removing Lance. I mean, they also used his dad's DNA was found on it. So yeah, because they had gotten a sample from his dad too. And what I thought was interesting is, yeah, like the gun you would expect, because it was Tyler's family's gun, right? So, and they went shooting. I don't know if he used this gun to shoot, but obviously it's likely that his dad's DNA is going to be on it. But what I caught was, they said, we expect anybody living in the house to have DNA present on it. But the people that they took DNA from were Tyler's parents, and they didn't say, they recovered this stuff from, well, it was assumed to be from the guy's house, and it was Lance's parents who owned that apartment. So I don't know why they didn't test Lance's parents too. Anyone that could be associated with them, because the screwdriver, like, that probably came from the guy's apartment, you know? Reasonable that you would think that maybe you would want to test, you know, Tyler's parents, but maybe also Lance's. Oh, hey, get crunk. Oh, I know, the gunshot residue. There's so much they didn't. Okay. So that is it on the DNA portion. Does anybody have any questions? Questions, concerns? Yeah, Lemon, you know what? Like, the first run through, it was these last two witnesses that I liked a lot. The firearm examiner and the second DNA witness. The first one, like, I had to really set it aside. There was something about her I was just not jiving with, but I really think it was just the way, like, she was looking at the judge, because whenever I re-listened to her testimony over and over again, she really did give it straight. And in fact, she was more inclusive, like, you know, the time she thought, okay, this is 3. And then she reassessed after getting more information in the lab, because they were receiving samples all the time. I mean, it was a really quick thing. Oh, woo. Okay. I love you guys too. I'm so glad y'all could make it. Let me see. Give the defense for bile. She gave them, what part of that was that? The problem was the whole case file, part of it is written by other people. And I do know that, like, obviously she used that to incorporate into her report, but she can't testify as to what they wrote, if that makes sense. So while at trial you could call this person, here it's just the this witness who wrote the report. It's like a double hearsay kind of thing, and it's hard to understand, really, because the burden is on the prosecution at the preliminary hearing, right? But that also means that they give, not preference, but they favor the prosecution at this point, because it's up to them to show to the court that they have enough that a jury should assess it. It should go to the jury. So, I mean, the hearsay step was just crazy. I've never seen anything like it, but it does kind of, like, some of it makes sense. It's like, also, the defense can't put on a full defense. They can only defend what the prosecution brings up at the preliminary. Now, at trial, that would be different. I don't know why security would be by that bus stop. That's why I want to know. I wish they would clarify whether, like, how many backpacks there were, because I counted. And hey, Allie, welcome in. I counted, and they talked about it more than once, but you couldn't tell if it was the same backpack or not, and all the random guns that they found. Trash, you're welcome. You're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on from the DNA. Good job, everybody. You made it through. All right. So, Miss Samantha here, she received the, let me show you. I think I have it on another slide. Okay, y'all see this? The bigger piece, I don't know if you can see my cursor or my mouse. You probably can't. But the 2 bigger pieces, it's actually just one. Okay, like, it's pictured and then it's flipped over. And this is after, I believe this is as she received it, I think. And then if you look at the top left, right above the ruler, that one on the far left is this piece. It's like the butt of the jacket, the casing. And then the 4 additional fragments, which there were 7. She just found out a couple months ago, but she didn't receive them. She was informed that there were about 7, like 7 from the medical examiner from a photo, but she testified that she only received 4. Okay. So she testifies that the jacketing and the fragments that were recovered from Charlie were inconclusive as to whether this round was shot from that specific gun. And it was very interesting to me. I thought it was so cute when she pulled out her little demonstration here. But the fragments are the 4 of them are part of the core. And if you think about it, when a bullet like explodes, the internal core just goes everywhere. But from the outside, that core does not. It's just lead. It doesn't have like stampings or engravings or anything. So that makes sense as to why you can't. I thought it was just funny because he was like, "Can you make a determination whether the fragments came from this gun?" And she says, "No, no, I can't. Like, that's just not a thing, basically." Okay, so we already said that she only got 4 out of 7, and she testified to there being dust in the barrel. And this is one of the places I wish that more questions would have been asked. He asked, "How did it get in there?" And she says, "I don't know." But why didn't he ask her, is it typical to see dust and debris in a barrel if a gun has recently been shot? Does that have any effect? Does that tell you anything? And maybe it was just as he's going, he just wasn't thinking. I know whenever you get up there and you're asking these questions, like sometimes they're kind of lost on you, but that's one of those that he probably should have thought about beforehand. Let's see, I'm just kind of checking. Hey, y'all, welcome in. People also wouldn't give it, yeah. Lemon, I think you make a good point. I'll go back to that. Okay, so I actually learned a lot from her, which I thought was really cool. And I will say this. So what she did was she took that bigger piece to use as a comparison. She took the gun that they said was the weapon, and she fired 3 like test round. Well, it's actually 6. So she fired 6 rounds, and really they're only required to do 2. And the reason they want to do that is they want to make sure that the markings on the bullets are the same or very similar every single time it's shot out of the gun. It's almost like a fingerprint, like a DNA for a gun, kind of. And yeah, so I thought that was great that she did more than what was required. And what she did was, and I didn't put a picture up here, but she compared like the striations on the fragment to those test bullets. And basically it was inconclusive because it had areas of agreement in the striations and such, but then there were areas that weren't necessarily in disagreement. They were just missing because of the condition of the fragment, right? Okay, so and I didn't really parse it out very well here, but she says that whenever she is, testing these bullets, first you look at class. So it's like the biggest, broadest grouping of them, right? And that will tell you caliber. And then I see screenshots. So the caliber, let's see, hopefully I included it here. So it will tell you the types of it. She'll input that information, and it will pull up a list of firearms that this could have been shot out of. It's not all inclusive. It can just help like as a diagnostics, if the gun is on there. But why didn't he ask, like, is this gun on there? Because I don't see it on there. You have the whole list of 30s, and then you get down to the 30-06. And because it's the bullet they're telling us, right? And the 3 of these don't fit. So I really would have appreciated him saying, hey, is this gun on the list? Okay. Yeah, let's go here. Okay, so we'll just talk about this. Okay, so that's the caliber. The subclass you have to look at to make sure it's not an individual marking. The subclass markings come from the manufacturer because the manufacturer has like a mold. So every single time, a cartridge is made, it's going to have the same, like markings, indentation, whatever, because that comes from the manufacturer. And what they said was oftentimes they can get confused with the individual. And if you think about that, that's the most personal one. Like you keep on narrowing it down. And yeah, she was saying, sometimes you have to look at subclass to make sure it's not an individual. But anyways, long story short, there were no subclass markings on this, but there were individual markings. Okay. So that's all well and great, but there was so much deviation between the individual markings that she couldn't make a determination. Okay, and so this is back one. I left this on here because I thought it was relevant. So the range she gave, and this is for somebody, I think I talked about this the other night. This is what I'm confused on. And I keep thinking there's a logical reason, and I just don't know enough about like ballistics or ammo to understand. But the range that she gave was 0.296 to 0.301. Okay. That is the diameter of the fragment that she measured. The diameter of a 30-06 is 0.308. And I mean, I'm not good at math, but that's outside of the range. So I don't know why he didn't ask her about this. Like why he didn't say, do you know what the measurement of a 30-06, caliber bullet, like what is that? And does that fit in your range? To me, that was the biggest fumble of the whole thing. One of them. Because I don't think she was even aware that she was testing for that. It seemed to me that she was just blindly testing the gun and the fragments. And I think that could have told a lot. So here's what I'm confused on too. If you've got a 0.308 and your upper end of this range that she gave is a 0.301, can a 30-06 shrink after it is shot? And I asked a SEAL friend of mine about this, and he thought it was a very interesting question. He didn't really know enough, but he said, I don't know, maybe under really extreme conditions, like maybe if the gun had been fired a lot and so it's all really, really, really hot and you're in a super cold environment, maybe, but he didn't know. And I would like to know. Honestly, that's a really good question for an expert. So I keep thinking because he didn't ask her that there must be something that I don't know. And that is it. That is our presentation, ladies and gentlemen. So let's go to your questions. Yeah, let's see. Christ is King has not been determined. So the fragments can never be, like the internal core, those little nuggets that you saw, those are never going to be able to be determined to be from that gun. because there is no like marking on them, which I found really interesting. I was like, all right, well, that rules it out. But yeah, it's inconclusive, which is why he should have asked. Tacitly, Texas, you're so welcome. Aiden, hey, how are you? Oh gosh, Bradley, thank you. Dust in the barrel after cartridge is fired in there. Yeah. 300-degree bullet flies out. I know, right? I suppose dust could get into a barrel after it's been shot. Yeah, there's a lot of technicality. Yeah, tacitly, Texas. I don't know. I don't know about the dust. Because it was laying on the ground. Maybe okay. If we're going with the prosecution's theory, then maybe if it was laying on the ground. But I think we all know that the damn thing probably hadn't been fired. Which they should have done that at least. Yeah. Bullet gets squeezed down through the barrel. That spec is correct. Okay. Oh, it's death queef. Okay, death queef. Are you saying that it's correct that the diameter of a 30-06 before it's fired can actually shrink because of the squeezing in the barrel? Yeah, it does expand when it's heated, but it also cools off. It goes from one very extreme temperature to like even just the ambient temperature. The air is really cold in comparison. So if you think about like heat expanding really quick and then you come into contact with something cold, it's going to contract. Oh, DL, thank you. 2 hours laying on the ground, dust, not pollen. Yeah, it was in some closet for ages or under bed. Yeah, I'm going to go back up to lemon because I know we had some question. Didn't test Tyler's car. Yeah, they didn't test a lot. Lemon, if you haven't seen my part 1 and part 2, I did one that in between that was like questions that they failed to ask. You should definitely go check that out. I'm still scrolling up. Tonale, Muppet sent you. Oh, Troy consumed. Oh yeah, we're okay. Also wouldn't give. Okay. I'm looking at you, Lemon. Forced people to be 2 when she said 3 before. Yeah, so at first, Lemon, with the 2, because she had changed her mind, her opinion. It had been 3, but then she decided it was a 2. And I had to re-listen to it over and over because I just couldn't grasp why. But she had more samples come in. So she was actually then able to test Lance's DNA, right? And to use it as not to exclude it, but as a known sample, right? So it's like process of elimination. So she had this like mixture that she thought could be 3, which I thought tells me that she's erring on the side of caution. But then once Lance's sample comes in, she's able to test that, and then whatever remains is like what remains. And if there's only one set of DNA there, which is all she found, there's not enough DNA for 2 people, if that makes sense. I was weirded out kind of at first too. I was not trustworthy. Oh, well, I mean, not that. I was trustworthy. Blah, blah, blah. Sunday. They destroyed samples and also wouldn't. give non-biased access. Yeah, they consumed them, but here's the thing: it wasn't their fault that they consumed them. It was the fault of whoever swabbed them. So they didn't swab the actual items. They got the swabs in the mail. And, you know, what they were saying is we run the risk of not getting enough DNA from if you cut off a swab. And so they did ask for permission to consume, which is use the whole thing. Yeah, I think it was a more upstream thing, and they were kind of catching the heat in there. Yeah, no residue testing. Look, there was no, there were so many things that they could have tested. The mic, the bloody mic could have been tested, but we all know that that went to Mar-a-Lago in a box. Thank you. Oh, I love you guys too. Let's see what else we got. Okay. In my opinion, is there any way prosecutors can eliminate reasonable doubt at this point? It doesn't equal, theory doesn't equal guilt. Yeah. It's going to go to trial, and this is why. So the probable cause standard is so low, but it's designed to make sure that, like, you're not sending somebody to trial because without a police report being written, you know, like sometimes probable cause has been like lost on that. Like, they, at a preliminary hearing, there is no report, you know, that was signed, or there's something wrong with it. But here, all they had to do was say, we have his DNA on the weapon that we think is the murder weapon, and we have this footage of someone on the roof. And listen, they stitched it all together. Right? It doesn't matter if the judge thinks he's guilty or not. They showed up with evidence of his DNA on what they're saying is the murder weapon, and they're saying that this is him in the video. Therefore, the court is going to rule. It's up to the jury to decide. That's what I really think is going to happen here. And then the trial will be a showdown, like a showcase showdown, basically, because then the defense is going to be able to call their own witnesses, their own experts. And that's why the judge kept kind of trying to be polite, but also trying to, you know, slow the defense down. And he kept saying, like, you know, probable cause is at, like, you know, 1 mile down the road, and we're going to go down 100. And that's why he was saying, like, with him attacking the methodology, that's not really it's not appropriate at this level. And it really sucks because we've seen how bad all this stuff is. Yeah, tacitly. I agree with you. They knew that they would have to consume it all. What they should have done, and they didn't do, is if you're going to test a rail, do 3, 4, 5, whatever samples. Like that's how you ensure that it's retestable. If you're going to send in swabs of the gun, like, swab it a couple times, because you know that they're going to have to consume it. Because what's going to happen is, if they cut it in half, if you didn't swab it right, it's not going to give you a full profile. And then that's going to hurt the defendant more. Like, they have to decide, okay, do we use the whole thing and everything we got? Or do we take this chance and then we're not able to rule anything in or rule anything out? It really was the Falmina and whoever, because she was responsible for collecting evidence. I'm sure it was her who was overseeing what was swabbed. There's no reason that they couldn't have swabbed more than what they did. Awesome. Walking warm food. Walking warm food. I love that. Grandma's okay, cool. I mean, the chain of custody is awful. It really is. But I just want everybody to know like how low the standard is, and it doesn't matter if the judge thinks that this is bullshit or not. If they showed up and they had evidence, whether that evidence is like gonna hold up at trial or not, that is a question for the jury. That's why this is so horrible. Yeah. And I think too, because I've been trying to get into the head of the defense team because I couldn't understand. I mean, they did miss a lot of questions, right? But there are also reasons sometimes that they don't ask certain questions. We got to remember we might not know everything, but I think that's why they went so hard on the methodology and everything else on these 3 witnesses, is because they didn't have anything else to get them on. And if they would have just like let it be without going after them at all, I think that would have looked bad. It would have been a bad look. So I think they had to pick something to run with and to at least let the court hear. Oh, I don't think they're going to convict him. Yeah, worm food. I would love that. Yeah, I know. I'm very skeptical of the defense after reviewing all this. I am not happy with them. In fact, for a minute, I was like, are you Lance's attorney? Because of the way he was questioning her about how can you tell it's Lance? How can you tell it's Lance? Like, uh, yeah. Okay. So, let's do a giveaway. I'll tell y'all what I actually had planned, and then I ran out of time. I don't think that they can convict him because that was supposed to be some of the best evidence that the prosecution could put on, and if that's the best, and the defense wasn't allowed to really combat that at this stage, they're going to at trial, and it's already a really bad look for the prosecution. Yeah, limited use immunity as it relates to Lance. If facts are uncovered, is it possible that another trial can happen? Yeah. Okay, so limited use immunity means, and he got it from the feds and from the state, basically says, for this short amount of time, we're going to give you immunity. So whatever you say here now can't be held against you. But if anything else is discovered after that, then yeah. I mean, I don't know why he wasn't treated as a co-conspirator if they were going to get Tyler. There's a lot of stuff they didn't do. They, like, what computers did they extract information from? You know, like the fact that they only took pictures of Lance's phone. Are you kidding me? Like, is this they should be embarrassed. They should really be embarrassed. Yeah, they were trying to establish the subjectivity, but if you really listened, like that is part of it, but the subjectivity is just you're using the analyst experience in the trade to know the difference between like two contributors and four. You know, they've done this long enough; they can tell if there's two contributors or four. And he was pushing on the subjectivity, which is good because I don't think that they, like I said, if they hadn't pushed on anything, it wouldn't have been a good look. But there really wasn't a lot for them to push on, so I think that's why that happened. 4 out of 7 could have been. I mean, it is odd that they didn't send everything to, and that's what um, is going to be brought up at trial. I mean, what an epic failure. We don't know what I mean, the four that went to the lab, she's going to be able to tell that they're lead, but you don't know that they came from that bullet. That's what she was saying. So I was going to do like a Price is Right game with you guys, and I was going to go get order a burrito and make you guys guess the price of the burrito if y'all have been watching the news. But I totally forgot to order it. That was going to be my plan though. So we're just going to make it easy. If you want to be in the pot for a $10 gift card to your retailer of choice, yeah, right. I know. I really wanted to. I love the Price is Right too. So I was going to be like under, over, whoever's closest can get it. All right. I'm going to write down a number. Okay. All right, guys. If you want to participate, drop a number in the chat between 1 and 500. Yeah, Death Quip, that's true. But nobody's surprised that we think it was a planted gun anyways, and it's his gun. So like duh, his DNA is going to be all over it. All right. Number from 1 to 500, drop it in the chat. Give you guys just a couple more seconds. I know. Who wouldn't buy a burrito? Okay. Let me see. Who did it? Okay. Drum roll. Our winner is Justin because it's 176. So 142, I think, is the closest. Yeah. I know. I wish we could have done a burrito. Next time, I'm going to do that because actually, what I was going to do was make a burrito. That was it. Make a burrito with all the ingredients, and then you guys had to guess how much it cost because I didn't want anybody like looking it up either. But we'll do this sometime. We'll do it next time. Justin wins. Congratulations for reading my mind. Oh, I know. He manifested this. Come on down. Next time, I'm going to do the burrito thing. So y'all start researching because I'm going to measure it. I'm going to be like, okay, exactly this much. Blame the dog for the no burrito. I know. Kathy, did you just come in here? You'll have to start back over from the beginning. On this one, Kathy, I think you should probably do normal speed. Most of the time, I tell people, if you want to catch up, go like 1.5. Just since it's psychic. Oh, well, we're wrapping up, but definitely give me a follow. Yeah, if y'all are in here and you haven't followed me or subscribed, definitely subscribe at Rio Gates here in X and everywhere. And Justin, either you want to message me on X or just email me. It's at riogatesshow@gmail.com. And yeah, I'm not monetized yet. We're very close. But if you want to support me by the buy me a coffee link, it's in here. And that would be appreciated, but not expected. But we're getting close. See, I'm reading the rest of it. Someone in Gaza. What did they take over there? Rubies? Shit. Oh, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not going there today. What? The tool markings. French tested the gun. I thought the defense was going to ask, did the Tyler gun leave regular identical markings? So the bullet went down to like the individual markings, and it did have individual markings, but what she said is they were so diverse that she couldn't tell. Oh, death queef. I'm close. YouTube makes you hit certain parameters yet, but I think we're on like a record. I think it's going to happen pretty quick. I've only been going for 2 weeks. So. But this has been good. Y'all definitely go through the other PowerPoints on, I say PowerPoints, most of them have PowerPoints, presentations or live videos that I did on the other pieces of evidence. And I think what I'm going to do next is start moving through the motions, like the last one that the prosecution filed, and see if there's anything cool in there that we could pull out of it. Yeah. Walk-in worm food. So Queef said that because a bullet does get squeezed in the barrel when it's shot, it can shrink. That was my main question, because I didn't want to come out and be like uneducated. So I've been asking everybody, like, can this bullet shrink? So I guess it can. I haven't caught the Hunter Kozak interview yet. Match C cable, but they match each 6. Yeah. Right. Lemon makes a good point. All 6 of the ones that they shot showed each other, and they couldn't match it to the one they pulled out of Charlie. But part of the reason they couldn't match it is because it was damaged in some places, and there was no, like, where you would expect to see like striations, like the whole thing was just blown up. Oh, whatever, Justin. Oh, I bet he is now. What else was I going to say? Oh, well, in some of my other videos, it's this. Go to the questions that they didn't ask, because that one is crazy to me about how nobody. They said that they found 2 boxes of 30-06 caliber bullets, at the house. Nobody asked them, like, did you count them? what variation were they? And we found in there, I pulled it, that there are like 17 different models of that caliber. That would have been pretty freaking important. I would be really curious to know if they matched. I'm reading y'all's comments. It's so hard to keep things protected out of the public. Yes. Puco's porch. I think they should be sanctioned for that, for releasing stuff that the court ordered them nobody to, and then they used it in that bind over motion. Well, they could have redacted that portion out for the public. I know whenever I file things, like I can set it to, public or whatever, but I'm sure they could have done that. And that totally undermines the judge's ruling. I think that that's totally sanctionable. They keep doing that crap. Ooh, did he laugh about Charlie? It is. Well, it's the most botched because it was planned and planted. I mean, I found where they were both of the guys were being Googled out of Vegas in July with like Erica and everybody else. So, I mean, these are two kids that nobody else knew. Why were they in their house being Googled out of Vegas where Miriam lives at the same time as like the Bronze Bay clan? But nobody knew who they were at that time. Yeah, the 6 bullets did match each other, so it was consistent. One gun, did they match each other? Yes. Yes. And you'd expect markings like, yes. So that is the presumption. But if you see the side by side, if you go scroll to that, I think it was I think she's the last expert to go, but you can see where she compares the test shots to the tiny little fragment that she had. And because of the way it was damaged, like where a striation or something could be, it wasn't there because it was like blown to bits. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Happy Sunday. I hope you have a good week. Take it easy today. Thank you so much for coming in and learning about technical stuff in biology. That was definitely a dry run. So no. You are to really show the gun leaves marking is. Yeah. And they ruled it inconclusive. They didn't say yes or no. Hang on. I'm rereading. To really show the gun leaves markings, yet the CK bullet. Well, the CK bullet did match in some spots. There were some similarities, but they just couldn't say all the way yes or no from the places it was like damaged. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, you too. Ken, also thank you for the coffee. That was really sweet of you. Oh, thanks, guys. All right, I love you all. Make sure you subscribe and like this if you haven't yet. And I will see you very soon. All right, bye, guys.